So we now have got an update, something that I was waiting on to see if we could get that to be able to talk about it. It was getting closer and closer, but it's one of those things where you just don't know when it's going to come until it finally drops. So today we actually had the 2024 Upper Deck AEW flagship checklist has dropped, which means, generally speaking, based on Upper Deck's calendar, it means that the releases actually get close to imminent, because by the time you see the checklist, usually you're about 2 weeks out. The date that I see now is September 11th, which would pretty much jive timing wise. And based on the checklist being out now, we're about 2 weeks. So I think that ends up working out in that week. Now, one of the things that I'll touch on really quickly here, and I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end, is that really what that brings it down to, and it's kind of what I was worried about a couple of weeks back, and I think I made reference to it in a previous video, is that with all the delay going into the fall, a September 11th release date is fine, but then given the fact that they still have Black Diamond and then also the newer version of Allure to be released still theoretically within this calendar year, if you are, you're pretty much compressing it into about a 3 month period. So it means we pretty much have been waiting this long to get a new release. We're still a couple of weeks out, but then once we do finally get this new release, it's going to be bang, bang, bang. Basically 3 releases in 3 months. So we're going to get a little mini bombardment, and then we'll see if we end up going into another drought going into 2025. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, going through the checklist, I'm not going to go through every single line item. I'm also going to include a link in the description to this from Beckett, because you can check out the breakdown with a lot of the different images and everything, which would have been already something you would have seen before with the previews. It's basically borrowing off of the traditional Upper Deck design. It borrows a lot of the components of it that you would expect. One thing that I will call out is some of the stuff that has been called out here. It's also been available in some of the other ones. We've got the high gloss coming back and things like the pyros and dynamites, but then you've also got something like steel cage. Now the numbering has been updated, so in the checklist itself, you can download an Excel file on this that lets you see what the new numbering is on it. So some of these have been adjusted, but just in general terms, it gives you a little bit of a different idea. I think there are actually 12 total parallels on the final version. So let me see if I can borrow this here. I've got the Excel file, so hopefully you can see this. So right now, if I look at that and do a quick count, I'm not going to include the one-of-one outburst. I've got 12 without the outburst. So gold pyro, diamond plate out of blasters, the outburst, which is going to be very similar to what you can find out on flagship hockey and some of the other Upper Deck products. The clear cut, of course. Steel cage is actually out of 249, which here it shows as out of 599. So this has been updated on the Excel file. Dynamite as out of 149, hobby and e-pack. Exclusives out of 100. Now this one, I want to touch on really quick. The pink pyro. Now this is a new one, and this is numbered to 79, but this same blaster only. I would say keep your eyes out for this one, because since we're talking blasters, I don't really know how many blasters are going to get opened of this stuff. Opening enough boxes to actually be able to get some of the cards out, and this will come into play when I get into some of the inserts. Opening up enough stuff to actually get some of these inserts and nicer cards to show up before e-pack is going to be a bit of a challenge. But in this case, this pink pyro, since it's blaster only, e-pack isn't going to resolve that issue. Out of 79 is actually pretty tough. So I'm wondering how many of those we're actually going to be able to see in the wild, given that it's already low number to begin with, and then we're into the retail side of things with the blasters, and I just don't know if enough blasters are going to get open for enough of these to actually hit the market. So it might be a little bit of a premium on these. It's just a guess. So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm wondering if there's going to be a bit of a premium for these, because it's numbered low enough that it's a bit of a challenge, but then on top of it, you're bringing out of blasters. I just don't know how many of these are going to be coming out of boxes, or if enough boxes are going to get opened to allow enough of them to circulate. So just something to keep in mind. I could be completely off base, but just something that caught my eye when I was looking at that. So you've got Gold Pyro and then Outburst Red, which is something that you'll see if you check out the flagships. I actually think the Outburst edition is really nice. I do enjoy the Outburst. I think it'll be interesting to see what they look like with the AEW cards, but nonetheless, we'll get that. And then High Gloss, which you're used to traditionally, and then the Outburst Gold is going to take the place of the one-of-one, which I think will look pretty good. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time looking at the initial checklist for the base, but there are a couple of things that caught my eye that I want to bring to your attention. Now, what's interesting here is that you're going to see some names that are a little bit newer, but then at the same time, you're also going to see some names that, given the delays and everything, some folks that have kind of disappeared that may already be on their way out, and then some new folks that haven't reappeared here yet. But we are going to get some new names on here, which is actually really handy. A few of them actually caught my eye, though, because I'm wondering if it means that we're starting to incorporate one of the things that I talked about in the past. So to begin with, you're starting off with MJF. You got a lot of the traditional names. Now, one of the first ones that strikes me is names like Kira Hogan, and then looking over here, Athena. Now, the thing is, Athena and Kira Hogan, for the most part, at this point, I associate with the Ring of Honor brand, especially Athena, who's been the women's champion over there for quite a long time. She doesn't really appear on AEW, and I don't think she has in a while. When I get a little bit further down the checklist, you'll see part of the reason why. We know there's a long lead time to get these released, so we know the checklists are going to tend to be out of date because of that. But at the same time, there's a couple of names on here that kind of lead me to believe that they were able to update it to a certain point, which then makes me think if you chose to put Athena in a lot of these checklists, I'm wondering if you are incorporating some of the Ring of Honor folks into this. Because again, Athena at the moment is more of a Ring of Honor talent than anything else. So it's interesting that she made it on here. And I'll give you another couple of examples that are even more pronounced that really indicate that to me. So obviously you got a lot of the traditional names. You got Adam Copeland on here, which is great. You got Marina Shafir again, someone that I associate more with Ring of Honor at the moment. But then scrolling down a little bit further, so you're going to see Britt Baker is highlighted. Just I'm doing that for myself and my own collecting purposes. I'm going to mark some of these off so I can pull it up in the checklist. And in the link I provide you here, you'll be able to go into Beckett and download the Excel for yourself, and you can put together your own checklist. Now, right after Britt Baker comes Will Ospreay, so a new name on here to get a card, and then Mariah May, which is great. That's actually really well timed because now, obviously, with Mariah May having won the championship at the big show, it's actually really great to actually have a real card, not just a introduction card, to actually have a real AEW flagship card for Mariah May, her AEW rookie, so to speak. I guess depending on what you consider rookie to be, but nonetheless, good timing, especially since right now she's been featured in a prominent program, ended in a championship, and right now she is at the highest profile she's ever been at the company. So really good timing to actually have some cards for her for people to be able to chase. So that's really great. So we've got Killswitch here, named Killswitch, which is really great. Now, other names that I note here, Harley Cameron, great. That's a good addition there to add because obviously she's made herself a little more pronounced now. And Diamante here is another example. So again, I'm looking Ring of Honor names to me, but there's going to be one that I'm going to touch on here. So we've got Timeless Tony Storm with the new gimmick, which is great. I think this is the first cards that are going to come out with her with actually listing as Timeless Tony Storm as opposed to her previous iterations. But the next one that I really want to bring up here, if I scroll down a little bit more, let me just see if I can find it. We got the Deanna Purrazzo, which is great. I think that's another new addition as well. And then the other ones here, we talk Nick Wayne, which I think that's the first one for Nick Wayne. And then here, this one is one that I particularly wanted to point out. Billy Starks. This is part of Athena's stable in Ring of Honor. As far as I'm aware, or as far as I recall, I think the only time I've really seen her, she might have made a couple of appearances in AEW, and I think she was in the Lumberjack match on a Collision, basically, as part of it. But other than that, for the most part, Billy Starks has been pretty much Ring of Honor the whole time. So if you're into prospecting, for wrestling there, she is super young, but at the same time, she's shown a fair bit of talent. But she's done most of her work in Ring of Honor and the Indies. So it's one of those things where it's interesting that she's included in this checklist, which is kind of really what this one is the exclamation point. The other ones may be suspicious, but this one pretty much is an exclamation point that I'm wondering if now they have the ability to use some of the Ring of Honor folks. And if that's the case, fantastic, because that has allowed this checklist is a little bit more varied, and we've actually seen some new names on here, as opposed to the same names being recycled over and over again that happens with a lot of the other ones. There's still a couple of weird quirks with the way this checklist ended up working out, but nonetheless, it's an improvement. I think this checklist is decent, and the fact it's got some new names on it, I actually think is very encouraging. It's going to help that product a little bit, at least make it a little more interesting for some of the collectors. Then we've got the tag teams and trios, which have a lot of the same parallels. So you're going to have the House of Black. So nothing in particular that's notable for me. A lot of them are very much what you would expect. Although one that I'll point out here is Juice Robinson doesn't make it into a base card on his own. He makes it as part of a kind of a duo there with Switchblade Jay White, which is kind of interesting. But nonetheless, we've got that. Same thing with Brian Cage. So there's a couple of names on here. They're going to appear on this section of it that are not on the other one. But that is good in a way because it does allow you to create some separation, and it allows you to actually include more names on here in these single cards and then be able to include some of the names you've seen in the past on this section here as well. Now, in the same vein, before I move on here, you're going to see also Matt and Jeff Hardy, which again, both of those are now gone from the company, so they're off on their own. So you're going to be seeing things like that, especially in the last couple of products of the year, because some of these you just haven't been able to update the names. Now, last one notable here from the base that I want to point out is obviously with the Ring Crew, we've got a lot of those that are traditional. We've seen a lot of those. We got Mike Posey. I don't remember where that name comes from. Don Callis as well, that's on there. And we've got RJ City to go along with Renee Paquette. But the other one that's kind of funny here is Prince Nana, which if you are a collector of Swerve, it would be kind of a fun combination. If you want to do a little mini collection for this particular year, it'd be kind of fun, especially since he does have an autograph in this as well, which I'm going to move over to that tab in a second. You could probably get like a Swerve and Prince Nana, dual autographs going on there, and it'd be kind of a fun combo, especially given the run that Swerve had with the championship. So that'd be kind of a fun theme if you wanted to put something like that together. Last thing on here is the photo variants. There are 25 different photo variants. They're 1 in 480 hobby packs and 1 in 480 e-packs. Some of these have proven surprisingly tricky to find, surprisingly tricky to come by. But obviously you can see a lot of different names on here. We've got Jamie Hayter back in here as part of that. And again, good timing with Jamie Hayter just having returned. And other than that, it kind of plays into what I said earlier. The only other really notable name, like I said, was Athena, just because, again, it does appear there's a little bit more of a Ring of Honor influence. I'd be curious as well if they actually acknowledge Ring of Honor with the logo on the cards as part of these individuals who, for the most part, to me, are more associated with that than the AEW brand. So we'll see actually what that ends up looking like. I'll be very curious. I'll be checking out some of those cards myself just to see. Autograph-wise, a lot of what you would expect. You do have some of the buybacks. It is kind of nice that they are listing them here on the checklist. And it's Sheeta and Jay Lethal here for the 2023 AEW buybacks, but they are limited to 10, so it is pretty tough. And you've also got Canvas here. So a number out of 10, they are a little bit trickier to come by. One other thing I want to note is that there are some limitations. There are some characters like Killswitch here and no gold Killswitch, where it's very strange that certain specific characters are excluded. Killswitch seems to be one in particular. Maybe they just didn't have enough stickers, and that's how they decided to do it. But then you're also going to notice in the autograph checklist, you've got SSPs and SPs. So you're going to want to pay attention to that because it is going to be interesting to see, like Athena is considered to be a short print, and then some of these other ones are not. So that's where it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that ends up working out. One that I'll note, Adam Copeland is a super short print. So we've got that going on, as well as Sky Blue. But if you scroll a little bit further down and you take a look at the checklist, Britt Baker is actually not a short print at all, which is kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a change of pace from some of the previous runs. We got a Harley Cameron in there. We got Diamante again. And then I actually skipped past it, but I want to make sure mention of Mariah May having an autograph in there. So this is kind of a rookie auto for Mariah May, and it's not a short print, which I actually think is kind of good because it's going to give people some chances to be able to get that. That might be an interesting play for some folks if they want to kind of start rounding out that portion of their collection. Again, you do you, but it's just something I wanted to point out. And it is kind of interesting, the selections. Deonna Purrazzo is also not a short print, which I think is good. It allows some of these newer characters to get a chance to get some cards out there. And then Billy Starks, as I said, is also not a short print, which actually works out nicely. And Julia Hart is a short print. So you're going to be able to use the checklist here to note the difference between the SSPs and the SPs. And you might want to remember that if you are trying to put together this collection. All right, so for autographs, that's it. Memorabilia cards, you're kind of familiar with those. We've got different parallels and different levels. I'm going to kind of leave this to a minimum as there aren't too many things that strike me. If you're familiar with previous years of flagship, you're going to know what that looks like. Then we're going to get into the inserts now. So this is going to be interesting. So as far as this one, we've got the acetate debuts checklist. This is 1 in 600 hobby. So that is already a very short printed one. So acetate debuts. So you'll be able to check out the checklist. We've got things like Sanjay Dutt. Here's a Juice Robinson. So it kind of plays into what I said earlier. We don't have a Juice Robinson base on his own. He's there with Switchblade, but then we've got a Juice Robinson acetate debuts. So you've got a very tough insert, but you don't have the base card, which is kind of interesting. And we also have an AR Fox here, which I actually don't think JR Fox also has a base card as well. So it's kind of interesting, the selections. We got Taven and Bennett as well. We got Johnny TV, who I'm also pretty sure is not in the base set. So it's interesting the selections that were made here, where you include them here and in some of the inserts, but you don't include them in some of the other ones. And actually, now that I look at it here, I also see Mark Briscoe. So actually, hold on. Let me do a quick search. So bear with me a moment. I actually want to see if we've got Briscoe on here. So do we have Mark Briscoe? Mark Sterling? Nope, actually, we don't. I don't think we have Mark Briscoe. That's actually kind of an interesting selection. So there you go. No Mark Briscoe, no Ring of Honor world champion, but then we've got him on here in this part of the checklist. So that's kind of interesting. We've got the Heroes and Heroines checklist, which is included. I think that's the more cartoony one. That one is there, I think, just basically to replace your main features. So that's kind of the happened with this one. And it is a larger checklist, which allows you to go into that. Then we've added the manufactured patches here, which I think is going to be kind of interesting what some of those ones end up looking like. You know, that may not be something that interests you, but it is going to be a little bit of a change of pace. So that'll be something a little bit different as far as the checklist is concerned. AEW posters, which I think is going to be a little bit interesting as well. I suspect it's going to use a similar design to what they do with a lot of the t-shirts when they've got specific matchups and you get one of those, because you got Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa. I would guess it'd be based off of that design. And you do have the foil board variants of that. AEW retouch checklist, which is 1 in 720 hobby. I don't know what that is. And there's only 10 cards for it, so I think it's kind of interesting that they included that. And then I think the last one that I really want to point out here and really kind of single out is the breakouts. That's been included in a couple of different sets now, but this breakout checklist has got 30 cards in it, hobby and EPAC only. But this time around, they're numbered to 49, which is actually fairly limited. It's going to be interesting to see how these ones end up doing, because I don't know what the pull rate will end up being with these. But making them out of 49, I think, is going to be kind of tough, especially when you're talking 30 different cards. So even if you pull one, you got a big checklist to go off of. And you've got some interesting combination of names. You got some of the ones you would expect, but then you've also got John Silver. So it's one of those things where it's a bit of a mix. You've got Julia Hart, which I think will be interesting. Ruby Soho is a decent choice, but she has been out having a child at this point. So again, the checklist timing and everything kind of plays into that. So she hasn't really been featured. But then you've got the traditional. You've got MJF, but then you've got Wardlow, who hasn't been on TV much. You got Sky Blue, which is great. You got Jamie Hayter, who's just coming back. So again, really great timing. But then you've also got Juice Robinson, who, as I said a moment ago, doesn't have a regular base card. So I think the mix and match of this is made it kind of interesting for me as I started going through this checklist. Last one here is the actually I'll scroll through the last couple here. Day with the Belt is also included on here. 1 in 2,400. These ones have already proven super tough. Like, I'm still looking for the Britt Baker Day with the Belt from the last series. So it's one of those things where I'm very curious if enough of these boxes are getting opened to actually be able to put them out into the wild. That's what's been kind of interesting for me. We got Dazzlers, which is a return from the previous, if you're familiar with it. Flying Through the Air checklist, you've got a lot of these. There are some interesting choices here, and they actually are some short print ones. So let me scroll down here. You'll see. Flying Through the Air, one of the ones included here is a Britt Baker Flying Through the Air, which makes you wonder if folks building the checklist here have a bit of a sense of humor. Britt Baker's not known as a high flyer, and I don't think I've neither Sting really. So that's kind of interesting decisions who you ended up putting in this set, number one. And number two, you decided to make short prints in the set, no less. So kind of interesting, but sure. And Hikaru Shida is also not really a high flyer, although she does do like a splash, but it's kind of interesting. I don't know. I'm not going to try to judge too much, but I do find it a little bit strange. Then we've got these gaming cards here with a couple different levels, including the gold foil. And again, a big checklist included in that as well. But you've got level A, level B, and level C. Level C being 1 in 40 in hobby, and then parallel gold foils, which are 1 in 360 packs. So they're definitely making my life a little bit challenging for the character that I collect. We've got an MJF retrospective set of 5 cards, Stepping to the Ring. I forgot that there were actually a couple more inserts here that I wanted to get to. Technique by Taz, I'm just going to scroll through these quickly. Total Access, which is kind of a traditional. And then we've got our canvas, which includes a lot of the nice photography. I do like the canvas. It's kind of interesting to have those included. We have the We Are Global checklist, including with the foil board, and that concludes the inserts. So that is a lot of the stuff that I wanted to get through. There is a pretty extensive checklist. I do recommend checking it out, and do take advantage of it, because included in that file, you've also got one that's got an overall listing, and you're able to search by the different characters and be able to put together your own checklists. Overall, I think it'll be a good series, but I think a lot of it is really going to come down to the price point that you're able to get your boxes at. If you're able to get some boxes at a decent price point, I think you'll do all right. You can definitely have some fun with it. I think putting together the set will be enjoyable, and some of these parallels could be kind of fun to have a set or two of these if that's something you enjoy doing. But I do think some of these other ones are going to be extremely tricky to be able to put together. As I said, that one pink pyro set, numbered out of 79 out of blasters only, I think that one is going to be extremely tough. So that may end up being kind of a sneaky one. Also, I would suggest, if you are interested in kind of picking up some folks before maybe it becomes a little bit more expensive, do check out some of those newer names like a Mariah May or Billy Starts, because right now Billy is, again, in Ring of Honor, has a lot less attention. So it's one of those things where, again, if you're into the more prospecting side of things, you're looking for names that aren't getting a lot of TV time on the main channel, on the main show. So that would definitely qualify. Nobody knows what the future holds, but again, regardless, it does provide an opportunity, because that's a newer name. A fresher face and a newer name is an opportunity on a checklist like that. I'm glad they included some of these folks, because I thought that was something that was kind of holding back the previous checklist and forcing the checklist to kind of feel same. And I feel like this time it does feel like it's been refreshed a little bit. There's a couple of names that I would love to have included in there as well, but nonetheless, I do think it's an improvement over the last couple of ones in terms of the checklist that we're getting out of it, at least including some new names in there. With that said, I'll include a link in the description to the Beckett article that also includes the checklist and the downloadable version of it. Check it out for yourself, and hopefully we'll be able to enjoy it here in a couple of weeks. I'll see if I can get my hands on a couple of boxes and open up a little bit of it, if nothing else. It's not as exciting for me as some of the other products I'm looking forward to. The new Allure, I'm really looking forward to that, but that probably won't be towards the end of the year. But regardless, I think it'll be fun to at least have some new items to be able to kind of chase after. So that's it for me this time around. I'd appreciate any engagement in the video. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we will catch you in the next one.